Welcome to day 2 of Fully Connected London. Quick show of hands, who was here for day 1? Wow, great. Great to see you return. Thank you for coming back. My name's Robin Bordoli, and I have the distinct pleasure of leading the global go-to-market team at Weights & Biases that's responsible for helping our customers around the globe iterate faster on AI and make them successful using our AI developer platform. But my role here today is actually to be your master of ceremonies. Now, putting on an event like this is not possible without 2 special groups that we want to thank before we get going today. The first is our sponsors, and we have 9 of them here today. They're outside. They've got booths as well, so please, during the breaks, take the time to go and learn about their offerings. I do actually just want to call out one special sponsor, Encord. Is Encord in the room? They're probably busy outside. So they've actually built a couple of integrations, both with the Weights & Biases AI developer platform, as well as with the CoreWeave Essential Cloud for AI. And they're actually launching those integrations today. So if you get a chance, please pass by their booth. All right, but the second group I want to thank is all of the speakers that we have here today. So we've got over 20 sessions today. So after we break, after lunch, we'll be going into 3 tracks. So unfortunately, you're going to have to make a decision. But the good news is all the sessions are being recorded. So you will be able to see the 2 sessions that you miss at a future date. So I want to say thank you to all of our customer speakers, because what they're doing today is bringing their hard-earned lessons for what's worked and what's not worked to share with us. And there's almost every industry is represented today, whether it's life sciences, whether it's energy, education, the government, automotive. So there's a lot to learn today. It's going to be a great day. All right, so we have 2 keynotes this morning. The first is the Weights & Biases and CoreWeave keynote, and you get not 1, but 3 speakers for that keynote. And then the second keynote, Sander from GSK is going to come up and talk to us about applying AI into the pharmaceutical supply chain. So, are we ready? Okay. All right. So, what we want to do today for the first keynote is talk about the past, the present, and the future of AI. Now, it would be remiss of me, given my British heritage and our location here, not to pepper in a Shakespearean quote. All right, anyone been to the Globe? All right, so test if I get the quote right. Anyone know which quote I'm going to use when we're talking about the past, present, and future? Can anyone predict that? All right, so the quote is, "The past is prologue." So that was Antonio in The Tempest, and it was talking about the past informs the present, which will inform the future. So I think it's really helpful now and again in this crazy, crazy market that we're in to pause and look back where we've come from, because that will inform where we're going. So I'm going to spend time talking about where we've come over the last couple of years, and then Lucas and Camille are going to come up and talk about what we're delivering today in the present. And then Lucas is going to talk about the future, about how do we continue to match this accelerating rate of AI. Okay. So, exponential growth. We all know this. We're living this every day. The size of the models are growing 10x every 12 to 18 months, as well as the power consumption and the infrastructure that's driving those models. So we already know this, but this is inputs into AI. What we actually really care about is the outputs. But the benchmarks are saturating faster and faster. So if you look at the older benchmarks, right, they're now approaching sort of 100%, but they've done that over about 5 years. If you look at some of the newer ones like AIM, right, in about a year, it's got to 80%. So these benchmarks are saturating faster and faster. So does that mean AI is starting to work for us in the real world? Let's look at some examples. Hands up who uses Notion at work. All right. Good sampling. For those that don't, Notion is a collaboration and sort of knowledge-based application. It's a real darling for startups in Silicon Valley. And so this is an indication of how AI is being adopted by their customers. So now over 50% of their new customers are actually using their AI features. And it's higher than that for their existing base. So this is an example where AI is no longer just becoming additive, it's actually becoming ambient throughout their entire platform. Now you're probably going, okay, yeah, but that skews towards startups. So that's not really representative of what's happening in the mainstream. So let's look at some examples of other functions and other industries that are traditionally not early adopters of technology. So let's have a look in the medicine world. Hands up if you know what open evidence is. A few folks, yes, Sander. So open evidence is a startup in the US that what it is trying to do for doctors and healthcare professionals is actually bring all of the peer-reviewed research into their daily lives, right? How do I actually find out the latest research? How do I actually integrate that into my daily clinical workflows? Through summarization, through reasoning. So we've now got to the stage where a third of physicians in the US are using open evidence. So both the number of doctors that are using it, as well as the intensity of the usage is going up. Let's look at the legal space. So Harvey, hands up, any lawyers in the room that have used Harvey? Anyone want to admit to it? Okay, so Harvey, again, very similar story. Over a third of the top 100 law firms in the US are now using Harvey in their daily workflows, as well as the individual utilization, the intensity of that usage going up. And the usage has shifted from trying to find a fact to actually helping them understand reasoning and arguments. Okay, now we'll talk about one which is probably more familiar to people in the room, but the AI coding boom. So in the last year alone, this has generated $1 billion of revenue in run rate, right? So about a year ago, a little over a year ago, it was just GitHub and Copilot. But the explosion of Cursor and Windsurf and Cognition, Replit, Lovable, generated over $1 billion, right? This is real, and it's happening now. So the other thing that's happening is the length of tasks that AI can now do, right? So context length has increased, the memory capability has increased, and so now the length of task is sort of approaching an hour that AI can work on. And what that means is that's the equivalent to training a classifier. So we're now approaching the stage of AI working on AI. So that's quite a leap forward. Hands up if you use some form of AI on a daily basis at work. All right, definitely more than half of the room. But we're not that too different from enterprise workers at large, right? So in the US right now, it's about 55% are saying that they're using GenAI at work on a regular basis. In the UK, it's at 40%, tracking on a similar trajectory. And I think what's happened here is this has gone from being sort of shadow IT, where people are using individual accounts, to this now being sanctioned by IT and becoming standardized and used inside of enterprises. So the questions really flip from, should we use AI at work, to how many different places can we apply AI at work? All right, so what I want to do is look back a couple of years to just see how far we've come in the quality of AI and what it can do today. So what I want to show is actually a video that was created 2023. So you can see this is Will Smith trying to eat some pasta. If you look on the left-hand side, that was the quality of video in 2023. And now you look at it in 2025, right? This stuff's hard, but you see how far we've come just in a couple of years. All right, let's have a look at music generation as well. Let's have a look at 2023. All right, not bad. Might be your taste of music, might not. But let's have a look at something that was just generated a few weeks ago. We were trying to ask it could it generate a song for Fully Connected?
Fully connected, we're glad you came. Through shadows and whispers we call your name. The promise of agents thrive.
All right, now, hands up if you preferred the first song. All right, hands up if you preferred the second song. All right, now I think that's a question about your taste in genre of music, not necessarily quality of music. But you get the larger point, right? How far we've come in such a short space of time. Right, the next example is code generation, right? If you remember Greg Bachman's sort of presentation where he showed the demo of OpenAI being able to generate a simple website, right? Now think how far we've come in what's actually possible with vibe coding. All right, we're going to do a quick sample of the audience because I want to get a general sense of what the average age of the audience is. So I'm going to do some rough math. Okay, hands up if you're older than 30. All right, hands down. Hands up if you're younger than 25. All right, sprinkling. Okay, so I'm guessing that the average age is going to be in the sort of 30, 35. We're probably in that range. So what I want to do is give a couple of examples of AI being used by folks much younger than us. So the first is actually Lucas's daughter, our founder's daughter, Matilda. This is an example. She's 5, and she is vibe coding a game. Just take that in for a moment. A 5-year-old vibe coding a game. So 2 years ago, you could make a simple website. Now a 5-year-old can make a game. Do you want to see the game? All right. All right, so now I will admit I have not played this game. Lucas, I think you've actually played it multiple times with Matilda, right? Do you win or does Matilda win? Winning is not actually the purpose of the game. The purpose of the game is to have fun, for it to be kid-friendly, have lots of animals around. But anyway, you get the core idea, like what's possible for a 5-year-old to do today that a 25-year-old couldn't have done 2 years ago, right? Now, if Lucas is going to talk about his kid, I thought I better talk about my kid as well. So I want to share another example. So this is my son Simon, who's a first-year undergrad at Trinity College Dublin. Anyone from Dublin in the house? A couple of folks. Thank you for giving my son such a great experience. I have to say, if you're a young adult and a student, Dublin's a great place to be. So what I want to show here is, he was actually asking my advice. He's still naive enough to ask my advice. What he should be thinking about at university. And one of the things I said is you have to become super fluent at using AI, right? That is going to be a definitive skill for you post-university. So, I do a number of business calls at home, so he's overheard my booming voice on Zoom, and he's heard me talk about evaluations, and the importance of evaluations in building safe, reliable AI. And so he went away and did his own evaluation. So he went and evaluated 6 models, and he evaluated on 5 tasks to go and work out which model performed best for his particular set of problems. So he's studying mathematics and economics. Here's one example of the task that he's trying to teach, that he was trying to achieve, right? I'm struggling with the concept of tangent planes in multivariable calculus. Could you please explain it to me step by step, and then give me a problem to solve? In the explanation, please list any prerequisite knowledge I should have before studying tangent planes. And you can see the score that he gave each of the model, and he weighted that particular task sort of 30% as well. So anyway, just a couple of examples of the younger generation and how they are applying AI to their worlds. All right, so now I want to talk about where we are today. So really, we're entering the age of reasoning, real time, and rapid learning. Now, we can't talk about 2025 without talking about this bombshell event that happened in January. Everyone remember the release of DeepSeek R1? Everyone remember where you were when it came out? Did anyone use it on day one? Okay, so the reason that it's important to just pause and reflect on this event is this was a big event, not just in the technology world, but in the financial world. What this resulted in was the single largest one-day loss of market cap for NVIDIA because the market misinterpreted the implication of this, right? The implication of this was suddenly we were going to need much less infrastructure, much less compute, because this set of models was so much more efficient, right? However, those market commentators didn't know economics, right? So suddenly everyone started to learn about Jevons paradox. Who knew about Jevons paradox before January 2005? Okay, handful of folks in the room, right? Anyone know who Jevons was? All right, yes. So Jevons was an English economist. So in the late 1800s, he actually observed in the Industrial Revolution that as we mined coal more efficiently, and as we actually found more efficient uses of coal with the steam engine, and James Watt's, that actually it increased consumption, right? So that's what happened here, actually. As you bring down the cost of doing something, the usage of it expands more than the reduction in cost. So you actually end up with a net increase of usage. And that's what actually happened, right? So when DeepSeek R1 released, effectively a whole set of applications now became possible because you reduced the cost. That did not mean the frontier of reasoning didn't continue to advance. All right, so I talked earlier about the benchmarks saturating, but as a result, new benchmarks are getting created. So this one was just created a little over a year ago, Frontier Math. Anyone uses this benchmark at work? Okay, so Frontier Math is actually trying to evaluate frontier mathematical reasoning. Right? So it's trying to evaluate mathematical creativity, chain of thought correctness, and the ability to handle multi-step formal logic, right? Imagine if you were Euler or Gauss or Newton, right? Trying to evaluate those mathematical brains. And so you can see where we are right now. So in a little over sort of 18 months, we're up to sort of in the 20-25% range on this benchmark. And you can see then that if you just extrapolated that, you can imagine where we're starting to saturate this benchmark, right? So we're at the boundary of starting to have scientific breakthroughs from AI. Here's actually an example from some of our Asia-Pacific friends. So this actually is from CASE, the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, where they've actually used AI to discover new classes of materials, hyperelastic materials, thermoelectric materials. So we're starting to use AI to advance the boundary of human knowledge and scientific understanding. All right, now the other thing that happened with the explosion of DeepSeek and the awareness of DeepSeek is that one of their RL algorithms, GRPO, became popularized. And as a result, we've seen an explosion in reinforcement learning, and we're starting to see companies create custom smaller models that are much more efficient and much more effective for their particular domain as well. So this is a long-term trend. And then the other thing we should think about is what today looks like the Will Smith video of 2023, and how quickly do we think it's going to advance? So this is another weights and biases company, Odyssey, that actually builds real-time worlds, models that are generating real-time worlds. So these worlds are not created ahead of time. They are created as on the fly as you advance through these worlds. Now, if you look at it, it's a little grainy, right? It's pretty good quality. And it's hard to know what the application of this is going to be. I don't know. Is it going to be architectural? Is it going to be first responder training? Who knows, right? But imagine how this could advance in the next year or so, similar to the Will Smith video advancing as well. So anyone using real world in any applications they're working on right now? All right, I bet, Sandra at the back. All right, I bet if I asked the question next year, we'd see actually quite a lot of hands being raised. All right, now we have obviously seen an explosion in agents, right? And in response to that, there's an explosion in all the tools, all the different flavors of agents, whether they're focused on a particular function like sales, whether they're focused in a particular industry. It's mind-boggling, right? You can't keep track of all of this, but it's an indication of the explosion of agents. They're showing up inside of different environments as well. They're showing up inside of IDEs, they're showing up inside of spreadsheets, they're showing up inside of browsers. But the question is no longer, can you build an agent? But it's, can you make them reliable, observable, and safe? We've definitely shifted this year. Now, one of the other areas we've shifted is rather than just having evaluations for models, is actually trying to evaluate the agents themselves. So Web Arena is a great new arena where this is being tested. And so it's actually, you can start to see, real-world tasks like booking a ticket, booking a flight, debugging some code, getting evaluated, and the agents being evaluated. Similar pattern for how those agents are performing and growing exponentially in their performance as well. It is a little wild that it's harder to book a flight than it is to debug code, but I think that speaks to, while that might be easier for us as humans, it's harder for agents, right? So, fascinating advancement. MCP, who's using MCP in development today? Who's using it in production? All right, MCP, Model Context Protocol, it's becoming the lingua franca for agent orchestration. And here's actually an example. We built our own MCP server so we could turn weights and biases into a tool that was available to agents. So, sorry, that actually... so now we've actually got an agent that is actually interacting with weights and biases, generating visualizations and reports so that AI teams can iterate faster and bring that data into context for them, into different teams as well. All right. So here's a battle that is actually underway in the market right now. Agent experience is the new user experience. So actually, APIs are becoming more important than UIs. So there's actually, hands up, who has a software platform today that they've built a set of APIs to be used. All right, hands up if you think the majority of your API calls are from agents. Hands up if you think the majority are from humans. All right. I would expect next year that to shift, right? That the volume is actually going to start to be, agents are going to be the dominant consumers of APIs. And so you need to think about your APIs and what that agent experience is. There's actually a news story this week that demonstrates this battle. So Amazon's e-commerce business has sent a cease and desist letter to Perplexity asking them to stop their users from using their Comet browser to purchase on Amazon. Because they actually think Amazon is claiming that degrades the consumer experience. Perplexity is arguing, well, actually, that's their preferred experience. They want an agent to go off and do the buying for them. So they want it to happen through an API, not through a UI. So this battle is happening today, and it's shifting consumption. All right. So given all of that advancement in AI, what are the new challenges that everyone in this room is facing as you try and move agents into production? There's a set of challenges which are new, and there's a set of challenges which predate agents. So the thing that is new is that actually agents are very alluring. They're very easy to build a fast demo, but they're actually hard to productionize, right? Because the world is unpredictable, right? And so, yes, simple task of just actually brewing some coffee and pouring some coffee. Lots of things that can go wrong. and often they do. So why are agents easy to demo but hard to productionize? There's two main reasons. The first is that our level of expectations has radically changed in the last couple of years, right? Translation, it used to be we would want to translate a word or a phrase. We now expect at midnight in Tokyo, having a late night dinner, to take a photo of a blurry menu and get an instant translation of all the nuance of that menu. Right? In the research world, we used to actually expect, I've written a document, can you actually check it for grammar, check it for syntax, check it for spelling mistakes? Now we're expecting AI to generate entire deep research reports that may have taken an analyst many days or many weeks to generate before, to do that in minutes and hours. Then on the coding side, we used to go to Stack Overflow and just check for bug fixes. Now we're expecting AI to fix the code for us. So our expectations have dramatically changed if we just pause and think about how much they've changed, right? And then the other part of this is actually because we're operating in dynamic systems, there's so many ways to break, right? So many ways to go wrong. So that's what makes it hard putting AI into production. All right, so what are the old issues that still predate agents that make getting AI into production hard? So the first one is actually the core insight that Lucas and Chris and Sean founded Weights and Biases on 7+ years ago. So I think it was 7 years ago. Correct me, Lucas, if I get the date wrong. But 7 years ago, Lucas did an internship at OpenAI to go and observe cutting-edge machine learning research and model development. And he came away with this core insight, right? Which is the process, the workflow for developing AI was fundamentally different than the workflow for developing software, right? Software is linear. AI is experimental. Most of what you're going to do is experiments that fail, that don't see the light of the day, but you learn something from it, and it informs your next experiment. So the workflow is fundamentally different, and that was the founding insight for Weights and Biases, which is software developers have great tools to build great software. At the time, ML researchers do not have great tools to build ML models. Now, the other part that's changed, obviously, is way more models to try, right? There's practically a new model coming out every day, if not every week, if not every day. So trying to keep up to the rate of change is dizzying. So how do I try the models, and how do I work out which one works best for my use case, my domain? And so what we're trying to solve, and what is still the bottleneck, is actually how do AI teams complete this iteration as fast as possible? How do I go from prototyping something to iterating on it and improving it, deploying it into production, fine-tuning it on the new data, the new feedback that I get, exploring how to improve that, redeploying, and completing that circle as fast as possible. This is still the bottleneck, and it's still what we are singularly focused on, helping you increase the speed of iteration. Now, the more things there are to try, the more things you've got to track, right? Hands up, who has been in their job less than a year? All right. So the rate of job change in the AI market is staggering, right? Most folks, it's sort of in the 1 to 2 years. What you don't want is when one of your researchers leaves or part of your team leaves and goes somewhere else, that the IP ups and leaves with them, right? You need a system of record, right? In the software world, that doesn't tend to happen because the code is your IP and it's sitting somewhere, right? But in the AI world, your learning is your AI. Your learning is your IP, and so you don't want that learning to leave with your researchers. You want to systematically track it as well. So with that, it's time to start to ground ourselves in the present day. So what I want to do is invite Lucas up to take us on the next stage, talk about how Weights and Biases is evolving, to keep pace with this acceleration of AI.